What's happening everyone? My name is Alex and welcome back. For this camera comparison we have the Samsung Galaxy S23, we have the iPhone 14 Pro and of course the Xiaomi 13. So we're gonna start this video by checking out some sample video recordings that I've done with the rear and of course the front cameras on these three devices. We're gonna change resolutions, we're gonna change the lenses and so on. Once we are done with the sample videos, we are also gonna move on and check out some sample pictures that I took with all three devices. And with that being said, let's begin by checking out those sample video recordings that I've done with the rear cameras. Alright, so for our first sample video, we are using the main cameras on the back of the three devices and recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. All three devices can also do 4K at 60 frames per second. And with the Samsung Galaxy S23, you can also record in 8K at 30 frames per second. With the Xiaomi 13, you can do 8K at 24 frames per second. The iPhone 14 Pro can only do 4K at 60 frames per second. But for this particular recording, yes, we are doing 4K at 30 frames per second and the main camera on all three devices. We have a pretty sunny day, but a bit of a windy day, so you're gonna hear some wind aside from my voice. I'm gonna stop here, we're gonna pan left, so kind of towards the sun in a way. And back right. And we're gonna walk this, and I'll try to walk as fast as I can, just so you can see how that video stabilization works on all three devices. And let's do a bit of running. And we'll stop somewhere around here. So main cameras on all three devices recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. Alright, and next we are moving on to a quick recording done with the front-facing cameras on all three devices. Now, the maximum recording resolution on the Samsung Galaxy S23 and of course the iPhone 14 Pro is 4K at 60 frames per second. So you can record in 4K basically with the front-facing camera, where the maximum recording resolution on the Xiaomi 13 with the front-facing camera is 1080p at 30 frames per second, which in my opinion is quite a shame. So I'm gonna walk this way just so you can see how that video stabilization works. I'm also trying to keep the phones as steady as possible. We're gonna spin around and walk this way once again. So yeah, this is how these three devices would record videos with the front-facing cameras on a fairly sunny day, but a bit of a windy day. So you're gonna hear some wind in these recordings and maybe the waves because we are just by the sea. So yeah, front-facing cameras on all three devices. Alright, and we're moving on to our next recording between the Xiaomi 13, the iPhone 14 Pro and of course the Samsung Galaxy S23. For this recording I'm using the main cameras on the back of the three devices and recording in 4K at 60 frames per second. So I'm just gonna pan to the right slowly, so kind of towards the sun, and then we'll walk this way for a bit. So here we have a bit more shade. And once again we're gonna stop here, we'll turn around and we'll walk this way. So yeah, 4K at 60 frames per second with the main cameras on the back of the three devices. Alright, and we are moving on to our next recording. For this recording I've switched the cameras to the ultra-wide cameras on the back of the three devices and once again recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. All three devices could also do 4K at 60 frames per second using those ultra-wide cameras. So just in case you're wondering. And I'm actually going to show you a 4K at 60 frames per second sample shortly. Alright, so ultra-wide cameras and 4K at 30 frames per second at this time. Alright, and for our last daytime video, we are using the ultra-wide cameras on the back of the three devices and recording in 4K at 60 frames per second with the S23 and the iPhone 14 Pro. Unfortunately, the Xiaomi 13 doesn't support 4K at 60 frames per second recordings with the ultra-wide cameras. So you can only do 4K at 30 frames per second if you're using the ultra-wide camera on the back of the Xiaomi 13. So yeah. Ultra-wide cameras 4K at 60 and 4K at 30. Alright, we have a quick video test in low light between the Xiaomi 13, the Samsung Galaxy S23 and of course the iPhone 14 Pro. As you can see, it is nighttime. We are recording with the main cameras and recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. So we're just gonna walk this way and we'll go to the right. And we're gonna stop somewhere around here and we're gonna pan left slowly. so towards these buildings here. It is also a bit windy and there is a lot of traffic around us, so you're probably gonna hear that aside from my voice. So yeah, this is how 4K at 30 frames per second recording between these three devices would look like. Alright, so super quick thoughts regarding the video quality. Well, first of all, I was kind of disappointed to see that the Xiaomi 13 doesn't support 4K recordings for that front-facing camera. I mean, this is a flagship device and it's also pretty expensive these days. So in my opinion, it should have definitely had 4K recordings for that front-facing camera. All the other recordings, they do seem fairly similar from all three devices, but if I would have to choose one, I still feel that the iPhone 14 Pro has the somewhat better video, followed by the Samsung Galaxy S23 and of course with the Xiaomi 13 being the last one. I've also noticed that the video stabilization on the Xiaomi 13 is not as good as we get on the iPhone 14 Pro and on the Samsung Galaxy S23. And I've also noticed that the S23 also has the best internal microphone. As for those nighttime recordings, well, neither device does that amazing, but I feel that the iPhone and the Samsung Galaxy S23 do better for those nighttime recordings compared to the Xiaomi 13. But definitely leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Alright, and next we're gonna move on and start checking out some sample pictures that I took with all three devices. And we're starting with the pictures that I took with the main cameras, and of course all the pictures were taken on auto mode and about a second apart from each other. And just in case you're wondering, on the Xiaomi 13 I've also used the Leica color profile for all the pictures that you are seeing, because I figured since this is the big thing that they've done this year, we might as well see those colors. And yes, I do love some of the colors that we got in some of those pictures taken by the Xiaomi 13. Now, overall, I still feel that I prefer the pictures from the Samsung Galaxy S23. The dynamic range in those pictures is better. Maybe the pictures also look a bit sharper compared to the other two. And I find that the pictures from the iPhone 14 Pro are a bit too yellow. In some of those pictures, there is just too much yellow. So I feel that for the first spot is either the Samsung Galaxy S23 or the Xiaomi 13, or they're pretty close to each other, and with the iPhone 14 Pro being the last one for that main camera. And next we're gonna move on and check out some portrait mode pictures. Now, for portrait mode pictures, if you look at the pictures taken by the Samsung Galaxy S23, well, the edge detection around the subject in some of those pictures isn't as good as the other two devices. So I think for portrait mode pictures, we are gonna have the Samsung Galaxy S23 being the last one. And for the first position, it's either the iPhone or the Xiaomi 13. But I feel that for these portrait mode pictures, the iPhone did bring the real colors in those pictures better. So the colors that I was seeing with my own eyes. But what do you guys think about those portrait mode pictures? Which ones do you like? The ones from the Xiaomi, the iPhone, or the Samsung? Definitely leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Okay, and next we are moving on to 5x zoom pictures. Keep in mind that all three devices do have telephoto lenses on the back, so I feel that the 5x zoom comparison will be the best for these devices. Now, looking at those pictures, I almost feel that the Xiaomi 13 and the Samsung Galaxy S23 do a bit better than the iPhone 14 Pro. The pictures from those first two do seem a bit sharper, or maybe it's just me. Not to mention that the iPhone does make some of those buildings a bit yellow, when in the reality they're actually white. So I was not a fan of that yellow that we get in the pictures taken by the iPhone 14 Pro. So for zoom pictures, maybe the S23 is better, maybe the Xiaomi 13 is better, so pretty close for those two, the iPhone 14 Pro being the last one. As for the pictures taken with the ultra-wide cameras, well, here I feel that the things are changing for the iPhone 14 Pro, and it looks to me like the iPhone 14 Pro has the better camera, maybe. I mean, I do like some of those pictures taken by the Xiaomi 13, so I can't really say which one is the best one. Maybe the iPhone, maybe the Xiaomi, I don't know. Leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Which device do you prefer for those ultra-wide pictures. It's hard to say which one is the better one for these pictures at least. Alright, and next we are moving on and checking out pictures that I took with the main cameras and using the night mode. All the pictures that I took, of course, were taken at night. Now, the first thing I've noticed here, if you're in a spot where there isn't as much light, the iPhone 14 Pro does way better than the other two. So there is really no comparison in a situation where you don't have that much light. Now, moving on to some pictures where there are some street lights and basically some lights around. Well, if you look at the pictures taken by the iPhone 14 Pro, they are much sharper than the other two, so sharper than the S23 or the Xiaomi 13. Between the Xiaomi 13 and the S23, well, for some pictures one of them does better, for some the other one, but overall the iPhone 14 Pro will do much better for nighttime pictures compared to the other two devices. Maybe it has something to do that we have the Pro version of the iPhone and we don't have the Pro or the Ultra version of the Xiaomi and the Galaxy S23. But for these pictures and these examples, for me the iPhone 14 Pro does better than the other two. But what do you guys think? Do you prefer the pictures from the Xiaomi, the ones from the S23, or the ones from the iPhone? Next we are moving on to the ultra-wide cameras, and once again using the night mode. Of course all the pictures were taken at night, and here once again the iPhone 14 Pro does so much better than the other two. Now on the second spot we do have the Samsung Galaxy S23, which is almost as good as the iPhone, but not quite, with the Xiaomi 13 being the last one. I mean, those pictures from the ultra-wide camera and the night mode from the Xiaomi 13 look like they were taken with the $150 phone, so I'm not sure why they included that ultra-wide camera, because it just doesn't do that great. So for ultra-wide camera and night mode, once again the iPhone 14 Pro does better than the other two. And lastly, we are checking out some selfies, and of course we are starting with some daytime selfies. Now for daytime selfies, it's gonna be between the iPhone 14 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy S23. In my opinion, even though I feel that the iPhone 14 Pro does better because it retains my face, my skin, basically everything about the subject better. The Samsung Galaxy S23 does seem to smoothen the skin a bit, and the same kind of goes for the Xiaomi 13. So for those daytime selfies, definitely the iPhone does better. And the same kind of goes for the nighttime selfies. So the front-facing camera does seem to be better from the iPhone 14 Pro when compared to the other two. So definitely leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts about these three devices. Which one do you prefer and why? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.